Hello. Over the upcoming summer, there are an increasing number of regulatory changes that are coming down the pipeline that affect you, the pharmaceutical manufacturer. We're providing this series of videos to help you adapt. One of the areas of impact that's coming immediately has to do with master data, specifically customers and products. When it comes to your customers, the need for having much more granular classification of your customer types is ever more important. You used to just be able to have retail and non-retail from a high level. But now you have to get much more specific regarding what type of retail entity it is, and it's that much more important to categorize each of your customers' class of trade.
Yeah, and one of the interesting things the CMS did was they broadly expanded what the wholesaler's definition is. Now, some secondary manufacturers or relabelers can be considered a wholesaler under the new guidance. So one impact of this is that a branded manufacturer who has an authorized generic and sells that authorized generic product to a relabeler or a relabeling manufacturer could actually count those transactions as a transaction includable in AMP because it's a wholesaler they're selling to. So this would change their AMP calculation, changing the value reported to the CMS.
And speaking of being more specific, with the increase in sales with the covered entities, more and more of those covered entities are purchasing their drugs through contracted pharmacies, which are actually retail pharmacies behind the scenes. So as Jesse mentioned earlier, the ability to be able to clarify your customers more accurately, identify and track the differences, because the retail pharmacy is now taking on more of a double role. Manufacturers must be able to make sure they can clearly identify these, number one, to reduce the risk of the double discount, and then two, to make sure that you're able to include or exclude those transactions correctly.
Above and beyond new requirements when it comes to your customers, there's also new requirements when it comes to categorizing your products. For example, it's important to determine which of your products are 5I and non-5I, in addition to which of your products were even approved, and how were they originally approved from the FDA. Was it an NDA? Was it an ANDA? That could have specific impact on whether your product is considered a single source, innovator, or non-innovator drug.
Yeah, it's particularly interesting when you come talking about pediatric drugs. The CMS sort of put a benchmark in there that if it's under 16, it's considered a pediatric drug. If it's over 16 on the label indication, it's an adult indication. And obviously there's impacts on the rebating on the Medicaid side because a pediatric indication you pay a lower rebate. What ends up happening though is for a manufacturer then who gets an indication for an older individual, an adult for example, they have to balance what additional revenue they would get from that additional indication versus the increased rebate Medicaid that they're going to have to pay to accommodate the indication for adult as well. In addition, the manufacturer now is responsible for indications that change over time. So if you have a drug that is, for example, for initially pediatric, it becomes an adult indication, or it moves from an adult indication to just a pediatric indication, you need to vary over time what your rebate percentage is for Medicaid to account for the different labels for different periods of time.
And the rule is clarifying what is considered a covered drug product. So for manufacturers, this may indicate a change from reporting to paying rebates. A manufacturer also has the responsibility to make sure that that FDA listing is kept up to date. In addition, for a one-time basis, the manufacturer will also be required to submit the FDA application number. For those drugs that do not contain an FDA application number, such as over-the-counter products, the manufacturer must write in and provide evidence to understand how the drug meets the definition of a covered drug. Again, putting more responsibility back onto the manufacturer to actually certify that the products are eligible to be in the program.